Not a good start for Aston Villa though, James. This is the game you were at. 4-0 win for Brighton against Aston Villa. Another team in flux. Unai Emery faces greatest test as patiently assembled Jenga tower wobbles, was the headline in your piece today. Lovely analogy there. Lot of change. 4-0 down in 31 minutes. Reduced to 10 men 5 minutes before the break. A disastrous start for Unai Emery's side.
Well, I mean, this is match day one of the Premier League, as they say. But I don't think there will be many more extraordinary minutes than that sort of 5 minute spell before half time when Villa were already 4-0 down. João Gomez then got sent off and they were down to 10. And they, in that 5 minutes before half time, they were just, it was like it was shooting practice for Brighton. Brighton had, I think 4 shots in the space of 3 minutes. And if one of those had gone in and it had been 5-0, maybe it could have been, we could really have been looking at something, quite extraordinary. Because honestly, at that point, a 7 or an 8-0 crossed your mind. It didn't.
Southampton's 9-0.
It didn't.
The record.
It didn't feel outlandish because obviously they were down. They were 4-0 down, and then they lost a player as well to a red card. Ultimately, of course, I suppose you have to say they did well to hold it to 4-0. And indeed, Emery spoke about that afterwards, saying, he was really pleased with the maturity that they showed. And it is important because, there's a massive difference between losing 4-0, as bad as that is, and losing 7-0, which could easily have happened. 4-0 is a bad day and can be written off. Had it been as bad as it could have been, things, could have taken on a whole different momentum. But I think a lot of what the kind of Villa story is about at the moment, it's about, as it often is, it's about the kind of the feel and the mood around the football club. Teams can lose 4-0, and indeed Villa, this team, as good as it has been, has had they have conceded 4 goals in matches in the past. I think it was the home game against Chelsea last season where they lost 4-1, and I think conceded 4 goals in roughly kind of as short order as they did here. So it does happen even to good teams. But clearly the fact that, 95 days ago they won the Europa League and they've lost, or haven't quite lost, but have lost 4 of those first team players and another 2 in Martinez and Ollie Watkins, who, maybe we'll come on to talk about. They also appear to be going. It's a huge level of turnover. I don't think what Villa are doing in some senses is that illogical. This was the team that was the second oldest, narrowly behind Fulham in terms of average age in the Premier League last season, average age of 28. They clearly do need to refresh a bit, and I think a lot of these departures are actually quite logical. I think in sort of pure age terms, I think Martinez, Luca Digne, even Tielemans are kind of all they're all aging out of their prime years.
Konsa's 28, I think.
Konsa, I would maybe have Konsa to me feels like was one of the ones that if I was a Villa fan, I think it's Konsa and Rodgers that would maybe really hurt me.
Okay. Ollie Watkins was kind of hovering over this game as well because he's been linked with a move to Saudi Arabia's Al Hilal. And Emery was quite pointed afterwards. He in 2 separate interviews, I think the first one he said the word silence in response to a question about Watkins. And in another one he basically said, ask him, why he's not here. Well,
he actually said call his agent.
Right, okay.
It was quite an extraordinary press conference. As you say, he was asked what's going on with Ollie Watkins, why wasn't he in the squad? And he said both before the game and after the game, words to the effect of, I can't answer that question. I can only answer with my silence. He's the one who has to answer that question. And then even, went as far as to say, look, Ollie has to explain the situation, call his agent, find out what's going on. Clearly reading between the lines. it's obvious that Watkins, not even reading between the lines, he hasn't been training with the team. It's fairly clear that he wants to go.
But we should point out Villa didn't score a goal until their 6th game last season. They didn't win a game until their 7th game. So Emery's been through worse than an opening day 4-0 defeat. But as you say, the change is different. And if you step back a bit and look at some of their incomings, Manzawi still to come back in, do you think the rebuild can work?
100%, I do, and I think 2 points that I'd make. One, I think it's what's interesting to see from Villa, related to what we just talked about, at a time when there's a lot of Premier League to Premier League transfer activity. Villa, who have had a lot of success with that type of recruiting the likes of Digne, Tielemans, Martinez, all Premier League buys. They seem to be moving away from that, and you've got these slightly younger signings from some of the other European leagues like Suzuki, Manzambi, 2 players who are both very impressive in the World Cup. Manzambi has been really, really good for Freiburg in the Bundesliga. Ruggeri from Atletico, who made his debut yesterday. I think the counterpoint to Villa, look at a team like Leicester a few seasons ago, the season that Leicester won the FA Cup and finished, I think, 5th. So kind of a comparable season to what Villa had last season. And they didn't, I think I'm right in saying they didn't lose any of their team that started the FA Cup final that summer. And then I think they only lost 2 players from that team the following summer. But the team just kind of got a bit stale together. They all sort of got a bit stale together and obviously ended up getting relegated. So I don't think what Villa are doing in terms of refreshing the team is the wrong thing at all. I think there's quite a lot of sense to it. But I think it's the extent of the transformation. I think is decidedly unusual to get rid of 6 first teamers at once. Is always going to be very difficult. I think it's always going to be a very difficult sell to the fans. Whereas maybe 3 first teamers, it would feel, I think, so different. 6 is a lot of change, and I think it feels like this season might be a hard season as they kind of enter what is kind of a rebuild, really.
Just finally and quickly, Villa shot themselves in the foot with a lot of these goals clearly and went down to 10 men. How good were Brighton?
Yeah, Brighton I think were really good. It was one of those first halves where easy to kind of fixate on some of the errors that Villa made, which were obvious, but also I think you have to give credit to the Brighton press, which was really, really good. They played with that kind of relentlessness. It was notable, I think, that one member of Fabian Herzler's backroom staff, I think it's one of his main assistants, one of the first team coaches, was up out of his seat at every single transition, was kind of up out of his seat and sort of really kind of, urging them on and shouting, giving his instructions and whatever.
Oh, it's a new trend, like the set piece coaches stepping up in the corner. Transition coaches up.
No, I think they played really well.